welcome to the Mindset Michelle TV show. We're so super excited for you to be joining us again today. And today we have an extra special gift for you, an extra special guest who will talk not just to your heart, but also to your mind and your soul and all of those different elements of you, because we have a yoga specialist joining us today and a rebalancing specialist. So hello, Paul, welcome.
Thank you, Michelle. Great to be here.
Fabulous. And for those of you that aren't aware or haven't come across Paul Wrightson yet, he is, as I was saying, a yoga specialist who's somebody that works with that rebalancing coaching to help his clients to come back into balance and to live more from that, like the yoga, that flow of life. But Paul, please, I'm always fascinated with people's stories of how they came to be doing what they're doing. So please share with the audience your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So I'm originally from Newcastle in New South Wales, and I've got two older brothers, loving brothers, and my parents are still together and they're still going strong at 89. So that's pretty impressive. And then I had a bit of a variety of professional corporate jobs, I guess, after I sort of left school and did some studies, and I wasn't truly aligned to those as such, and definitely wasn't feeling that I was aligned to that particular corporate life, I guess. So then I started following my passions, and one of those was the yoga space, which led into the coaching side of things as well at a later date. But I guess there was a period that I had a life-changing event that occurred, and that sort of made me realise and have a good hard look at myself and make some life-changing decisions. And now I have moved into that space where I do guide others through the yoga and through the coaching to basically live a balanced life, if you like.
Wonderful. And I really hear you, because they talk about the great resignation, the great transformation. But in a sense, people were, whether it was a significant life event or just, going to the beach and deciding one day, I need to do something different. So people were kind of coming to these realizations even before we had the COVID, it might have been that significant event. So I'm interested though with you, with that background, both in corporate and in more of that metaphysical and the yoga and that really deep connection to who you are. What do you then describe for yourself as success? What does it mean to you?
To me, it means obviously more than the financial side of things. So, we can slog away in a job and earn all the money in the world, but if you're not happy internally, then there's obviously a conflict of interest there. For me, it's like, I guess, coming back to the living to my true values, whatever they are for the individual, and then having balance across all life areas. So, you could be strong in your career, but then your relationships might be failing, or, your health might fail, or whatever it might be. So it's having that holistic approach and balance to life, and having a sense of, I guess, calmness and contentment every day. Like, obviously, life throws things at us, and there's curveballs or whatever. So it's not always living in that space, and we are human, and but it's trying to be in that space as much as I can, which then allows, I guess, for less stress on my body as well, and a clearer mind and whatever else that comes with that.
I really love that approach to success, that clearer mind, the sense of calmness, the holistic approach, and living your values, all of these different, I think of it as like a smorgasbord of ideas and approaches that really reflect that much wider and much more in-depth understanding of what success means to you and how it plays out, whether that's, being out of balance because life happens, and bringing yourself back into balance. What sort of suggestions would you have then to share with people that may help them? You've been doing this for a while, you've become an expert in this space, been running training programs online for a few years. What suggestions do you have for other people for how they can create some of that mindset success?
Yeah, good question. So for me, it's I'm a big believer that we've got a big connection to nature. So when we're in this, I guess, space of whether it's in corporate or whether we're in a space where our life is not quite as balanced or not quite, rating out of 10, not quite up to like a higher number, it's important for me to get back into, and I guide others to do this as well, to get back into nature. So really stepping out, taking the shoes off, sitting in the beach or whatever it is to bring that balance and calmness to the body, because like it's pretty unusual for me to sit in amongst a forest or go for a bushwalk or sitting on the beach and be stressed. I mean, it's such a releasing thing. So, that's a huge thing for me. And then bringing in the awareness of how you actually are feeling at that state as well, because we can stay so busy that we lose that sense of awareness and we just keep going. So it's like, trying to bring that the busyness out of it and then bring the connection back in. And then that leads into having time for yourself as well. So one of the things I try and do, I'm in a loving relationship now with my wife, Veronica, and we understand that even though we have a lot of time together, we also have the need of that space as well. So, and that's when, the connection to the values comes into it, stepping out of the role models we've got as well, whether it's a parent or a father, mother, friend, or whatever it is, and just being. So that's where the nature comes into it as well.
I really love that, and thank you. You again, you shared so much about the nature. The word smorgasbord just keeps coming to mind, because it's that sense of abundance. You're sharing about being with nature, but you have this smorgasbord of different ideas and concepts around it as well. And so I love that focus on calming the mind and calming the body through using nature. I live quite close to a beach, and I remember one time I went down there when a job that I liked had finished and I was leaving the people, and there was a little bit of grieving coming up. I remember sitting there staring at this beautiful surroundings and thinking to myself, well, if I'm going to be sad, this is, the best place on the planet to be sad at. And of course started laughing and couldn't stay sad.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much power in it, isn't there? Like it's just significant. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it helped to shift. Humor obviously helped to shift, and there were a few tears, and life went on. But that beauty of nature and connecting. Another funny story I have is in West Australia, where I grew up, that sense of timelessness, that I was a speck on a speck of dirt in the bush. When you're out in the bush, and the Aborigines, of course, know this very well, that at the time of the dreaming and everything. And so when you kind of get to that stillness, I like to think of it as stillness inside, that for me brings that calmness. And so that awareness comes with training. What sort of tips do you have for how people can become aware themselves about stopping the mind chatter, or just even feeling the body?
Yeah, I resonated with some of those stories you were just mentioning there too. I think the breath is a powerful one. So, the majority of the people, we don't breathe like properly. So for me, it's back in the day before I sort of knew how to breathe, I was quite shallow as well. So it's just, and that causes obviously stress in the body. The mind keeps sort of going at 100 miles an hour. So once we learn how to slow the mind down using the breath, that's when everything sort of starts to relax. So you feel your whole physical body start to relax as well. So to bringing in that calmness and the different mindset, it definitely would start, or does start with the breath for me especially. So, and I've had, I've been in group situations. I was in a men's group a couple of years ago, and we used to go for a walk on it was a Sunday morning. We used to do breath work just before we started. And so a lot of the guys hadn't actually been, even just breathing, even evenly in and out through the nose or mouth, whatever they prefer to use, they never had that sense of calming using the breath. So that was like, it's a very powerful exercise, and we don't utilize it enough, unfortunately.
Yeah, again, I'm full of stories today. I've been
Yeah,
singing in choirs on and off for
oh
many
yeah,
years.
awesome.
And choirs, it's all about breathing through the diaphragm, which is down here, as opposed to through the chest. And
True, yeah.
so that's what you're describing is the majority of people breathe very shallowly and through the chest up here. And
Yeah.
what you practice with singing and other breath work is to breathe from your diaphragm.
So true. Yeah. And, that's part of the yoga breathing, but it's also other breath work as well. But it's, yeah, definitely the diaphragm breathing is for sure. And, I guess the way I describe it, the people don't really understand, I guess, the diaphragm. It's just having that deep breath in and almost like ballooning your belly out. So it's not sort of like trying to build the chest out. It's sort of like ballooning the belly out and then exhaling through for the same sort of number of seconds. So you've got that even count in of seconds and even count out, and then just ballooning the whole, almost like expanding the whole front of the body, and that allows for the lungs to fill up to full capacity. So, and then we're feeding our brain with more oxygen, and like our blood cells are healthier, and the whole just continues. So it's a very simple but extremely effective way to bringing that sense of calmness and peace mentally and physically.
And even that's so beautifully described about ballooning out your diaphragm, and even the act of doing that is the part of that training for training the mind that you so beautifully described, because as you're focusing on breathing out your diaphragm like a great big balloon, it's harder for your brain to think, oh, I need to get milk at the shops or whatever when you're focusing on your diaphragm.
For sure. I mean, the mind never stops. It's just trying to practice to actually slow it down and focus on something that will actually slow it down. So, yeah, good point.
Yeah. And I'm interested in your opinion because I've come across different breath techniques, and you were saying there about, say 3 breaths in and 3 breaths out as, an evening. But other practitioners have said, in through the nose, out through the mouth, count to 5 in and out and 3 out. What's your opinion about breathing and different counts around that?
Yeah, look, there are lots of different theories around that. And I guess going back to the yoga space, I was became friends with Sanjay, who lives in Sydney now, and his mum taught me, and he and Sanjay taught me a lot about the yoga philosophy and also the practice. So Sanjay's mum's a Swami, so she's still alive in northwest of Sydney. So she taught and also taught me like a lot of the simple breathing techniques. And her theory was, and the yoga theory is that that when you breathe in and out through the nose, you've actually got more control. So if you breathe in through the mouth, you've actually got, I guess it's because it's a wider space, even though some people say, well, it's a wider space, so you're taking more air in. But with the nose, you actually can control it and slow it down more than gasping, sort of at the air with your mouth. So, I mean, whether it's what's right or wrong, I mean, the traditional yoga ways is in and out through the nose, except for there are a couple of breathing techniques that use the mouth, but predominantly they're the nose, and it's only because it's from a yoga side, they believe it's how you got more control with that as it comes in, and cleansing as well, which is going through the nostrils as well. So yeah.
Wow, you do learn new stuff every day, and I'm so glad I asked that question, because I didn't know that was the yoga approach to it. And also, I don't think I've come across breathing in and out through the nose. I've had through the mouth and through the nose, like in through the nose and out through the mouth or something, but never both through the nose.
It's a fascinating thing. Like it's, I do a bit of running as well, like not as much as I used to, but as a runner, I was always taught to, well, all different ways. So one person say in through the nose, out through the mouth, in and out through the mouth, because you're getting more air in. But if I'm at a certain pace and not physically, like almost lying on the floor in exhaustion, if I'm breathing out through the nose, I definitely feel as though I'm have more control with the actual regulating my breath. It's just a fascinating way. But I mean, I even bring this in with coaching as well, because I believe it's, the breath work is so important. But I mean, it's one of those things where if people have always breathed it out through the mouth, changing it is not going to potentially be an overnight thing. So they might have to work on it. They may never get it, which is fine, because they might be used to doing it a certain way. So, I mean, the most important thing, I guess, is just, having that awareness and bringing, that calmness to the body using the breath, no matter, what sort of technique you're used to or use, I guess.
And you raised such an important point there about, bringing that awareness to what you're doing, because the simple example I use is if you brush your teeth in the morning with your right hand, then, just even switching hands to brush your teeth, it's like driving a car. There's so many things we do like an autopilot. And I love how you're saying the similar idea around bringing your awareness to how you're breathing. So are you even aware of how you're breathing? And then as you experiment, in and out through the nose or in and out through the mouth or alternating, are you then aware of how you've been doing it up until that point to be able to go, oh, actually, I always breathe through my mouth, or I always breathe through my nose, or as you're playing with it, going, how on earth do Aborigines play a didgeridoo?
Yeah,
and do that
right.
cyclical breathing.
Yeah, it's funny you raised that about doing the alternate toothbrush brushing. So maybe it was the beginning of the year, my wife Veronica and myself started watching some Bob Proctor. Actually some of the stuff he's got, like a lot of information anyway out there, whether it's on different channels or YouTube. But there was one exercise that he swore by, is actually for one whole year writing a certain paragraph out with your opposite hand. So it's all around that. It's a different connection to the brain, but also then it's you've got that awareness, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's like it's almost you've got to bring the conscious mind in to actually write that paragraph out. So I started doing it, and I'm up to about when I started. I think I started in March, so I haven't missed a day yet. But it is doing it in the morning as well. It's another way of bringing that awareness in, and it actually does slow my whole body down, because instead of just writing it out with my normal hand, I've actually got to think about every single letter and curve and crossing the T, and it feels a bit weird, but it definitely does work for sure.
Yeah, I've been doing some neuroscience training in different areas this year, and one of the experiments I did was move my towel. So I have like a clean towel over here and the towel I'm using here.
Yep.
And I switched around the positions.
Oh yeah, wow.
And like the toothbrushing thing, every time I went to reach for the towel, I then had to think about it, which then made me burst out laughing, because it was such a silly thing, but simple thing to do, to then start to build those neurons and start to bring some more thought to what was I actually doing, as opposed to being in a sense of autopilot through the day. What you're doing. But I'd love to hear later in the year, or March next year, we should get together and talk again about how that exercise evolved for you, because I hope you're keeping a diary of how the exercise goes, because it would be triggering different things at different times.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is fascinating, because if I try to rush it, then I'm doing the S the wrong with weird. I always have trouble with the S and the F. I think it's because of the curves in it. But if I slow it down, actually be like 100% mindful on it, it actually is quite neat. So it's it's definitely a powerful exercise if anyone wants to start the day like that, bringing that awareness in and different connections to the brain, whatever. It's very powerful. So yeah, thanks, Bob Proctor.
And what a wonderful tool. So we've talked about toothbrushes and writing, moving the towels. It could be even where your toothbrush is located on the sink, moving it to the other side of the sink. So these are all really good suggestions to help people to bring their awareness to the moment. And in that similar way to breathing that you so beautifully shared, it's about bringing the awareness and that understanding to how you're currently doing things. And if you want to keep doing it, then great, but building those motor neurons to keep shifting and keep you, in fact, I'll digress a little bit, but dementia, a lot of the research around dementia shows that it's because people are just, not using as much of that mental capacity. And these little things that we're talking about are things that people can do every day in their life to kind of keep building and keep creating and growing neurons in their brain.
Yeah, I think it's pretty important. I mean, we've got to keep ourselves healthy as long as we can, really, unless, so yeah, without our health, we pretty much don't have much. So, yeah.
Exactly. And so we're talking about being in nature, we're talking about breathing. What other sorts of suggestions as a business owner, especially in that, I guess, a little bit more crowded space around the softer skills, like the recharging and the balancing. What suggestions do you have for perhaps other entrepreneurs or other business owners that may sometimes find it a little bit harder to themselves stay motivated or balanced or centered when they're in, quite a competitive marketplace?
Yeah, that can be a challenging one. I mean, it's I do a fair bit about gratitude as well. So, and try to celebrate the small wins. So it's easy to get to the end of the week and think, this hasn't happened, or, whatever it is, and look at all the negative side of things. But if you start to reflect back and look at actually it wasn't too bad. And then even if the small things that happen throughout the week that can, change the mind, I guess, into actually, it wasn't too bad, instead of focusing on some of the big things that may not happen or haven't happened yet. They still might. But I mean, it's not taking steps to move forward, but not putting too much pressure on ourselves as business owners that, we've got to solve the world in 24 hours, because it's, we start moving towards burnout then, whether it's in a business owner or whether it's in a job. So it's having, I guess, slowing down enough to have that gratitude, and then ensuring we're still taking steps forward to change the world, but making sure we're not trying to, I guess, do it overnight, and just have like total patience and knowing if I am taking steps, or we are taking the steps necessary, that that's all we can do, and be patient.
I really love even how gently you described there about the gratitude and patience and moving, taking those, I call them micro steps, whatever the steps are, taking those steps towards where you would like to go. I actually, every now and then, I start another gratitude diary, because it is a really good way, again, of at the end of the day, writing out in just a couple of lines, reflecting on, what am I grateful for? And it really, it's again about training the brain so that you're not focusing on all the things that went wrong in the day, which is unfortunately what many people do, and I do.
Yeah, it's so easy to do that. Yeah, absolutely.
It is, and to focus on, well, I had 20 things on the list and I only got one done, which is what I would normally be lying in bed thinking about. But bring that gratitude practice of, well, actually, in getting that one thing done, I reconnected with so-and-so and I did this and I did that. So that quality of life rather than ticking the tasks off.
Yeah, absolutely. So important, for sure. I mean, we're so task driven as a society, like it's almost people judge us as well. You've got this big list and you might tick one thing off, and then if someone looked at it and think, well, what's happened? What have you done, sort of thing. So it's having that contentment and patience that if you only tick one thing off, at least that's one thing stepping into the right direction. So, I mean, it's just trying to take that whole pressure off ourselves as individuals and trying to live up to someone else's expectations as well. So, yeah, it's quite a challenging one.
I really hear you with that taking that pressure off and not comparing yourself, or comparisonitis. That there's something else that you've reminded me about, which is that I think the disease of busyness. So there is a lot more focus now on mental health and mental wellness issues, but I wish that, just as much as we seem to celebrate busyness and, getting up at 5 a.m. to have everything done by 6 a.m., I wish that in some ways we've celebrated as much the patience and the small steps towards getting to your goals, because you then, like you've so beautifully pointed out, you then have the time and the reflection to be able to see your journey and appreciate the journey, and not be, as you said, task focused. You're focused on enjoying the journey much more than on the busyness and that focus.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree.
So if people were wanting to get hold of you, what's the best way to reach out to you and find out more about the yoga and the rebalance and coaching?
Sure. Yeah, they can reach out on LinkedIn, so just under my own name, Paul Wrightson. And then I've also got a private Facebook group, which is called Live Fully Now with Paul Wrightson. So, yeah, they can either go into LinkedIn, find my name, or on Facebook with the Live Fully Now with Paul Wrightson. That's been the best way for sure.
And you mentioned before about doing this online. So you've shifted a lot of, because I would still think of yoga as being more traditionally in a studio sort of setting, but you mentioned that you're online now?
Yeah, so I had this vision and thought back in 2019 before COVID hit that there's a lot of people, whether it's a gym or whether it's a yoga studio, that don't want to go to a gym or a yoga studio for numerous reasons. And so I thought, well, what better way would be use the tool of Zoom or video to take it straight into someone's lounge room. So that's how it sort of originated. And so, some people turn up in their pajamas. I mean, they're just basically, because in the morning they can just wake up, roll out of bed and straight into their, turn the laptop or phone on or whatever, and then straight into the session. So it's pretty powerful.
Wow, it is very powerful to do the rising sun yoga flow. I can't even remember it now, but yoga flow.
Yeah.
as you're actually looking at the sun rising in front of you, that would be really beautiful. And I'd encourage people to reach out to Paul if that is the sort of thing that may help you.
Yeah, it's a good way to start the day, that's for sure.
Yeah. I start with meditation, and it's again that calming and that focus, to
perfect.
bring in that stillness before you then get out of bed, and it's not very still then.
That's right. Definitely helps with coping, I guess, with everything that's happening. But yeah, that's awesome.
Well, and it's also both what we're describing with the meditation and the yoga. It's also a very good way to learn to move away from just TV and social media and all of the negativity on there, and bring your focus back onto you and positive sides. But before we go down that rabbit hole, Paul, if you were to give some advice to your younger self, what might that advice be?
Probably, like you mentioned before, Michele, just stepping away from the busyness, and it's okay to be, bring myself into stillness, and then writing out my top 5 values and living towards those, I guess, with definitely taking away society's expectations and living towards my values.
Do you think that as a younger self, you may have had different values to today?
Some of them the same. It was actually, we just did values actually only 2 weeks ago. Re-looked at them again. A few of them had changed in the last sort of like 5 or 7 years, but I think it's that, there were definitely 3 or so that would have changed since, my younger self. And then it's just having that confidence and, more the confidence and the non-judgment look at it to actually start living like that. So, I mean, we're only here once, and it's, nothing worse than, having a health scare or something that sort of significantly changes to start that process. So, it's probably more that just starting to be more confident and living dropping the expectations and self-judgment and judgment from others, and then really honing in on those values.
And what a beautiful way to round off another amazing show about inspiring people to live to their values and to focus on that even from a younger age. So thank you so very much, Paul, for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, it's been great. Good discussion.
And thank you to everybody, all of the magnificent viewers out there, that we really do appreciate all of the emails and the messages that come through saying about how the show is making such a difference, and the suggestions from experts like Paul today are really helping to keep building that successful mindset. But for now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.